Holla Shot out of the Sons of Zion Baltimore camp, out here with another Sabbath day teaching, another beautiful Sabbath day. We come out here and preach the word to those that are weary, to come out here and bring sinners unto repentance. You understand that? And chiefly today, we're going to be harping on a doctrine, man. We're going to be harping on how to bring the Israelites back to fold. So today's video topic, we are going to be talking about how Hispanics and black people are the same, right? Latinos and blacks are the same. You understand that? Latinos and what's going on, brother? Hey, you got 2 minutes? I can share a scripture with you.
Yeah, I got 2 minutes.
Was saying today's topic is going to be on how there is no difference between blacks and Hispanics. We are all the same people, man. We are all the same people. And hopefully by the end of this video, those of you who aren't in the know, hopefully I provide enough substance. Hopefully I provide enough evidence for you to get it. And for those of you who are in the know, hopefully you're motivated to go eat a taco, man. So segment number 1, we're gonna go into debunking the lies. Segment number 1, we're gonna go into debunking the lies, the obvious lies, right? The titles that our people go by and our race, man. Because today we're talking about our race, right? We're talking about our race and who we are as a people. And we're gonna start by debunking just the obvious lies of what our people go by. What do I mean by that? Our people go by black. Our people go by African American. You understand that? So we can't be black. There's no landmass called black. There's no language of black. Nobody's skin is actually black. Nobody's skin, nobody in this world, you're gonna look at them and they got on a black hoodie and they're the same color as their hoodie. Nobody in this world is actually black. That is something that they came up with, you understand that, during the times of when we was in slaves and when we was goddamn, and we were actually gonna go into it, it actually goes back very far. They just call us black. Because black is synonymous with sin. Black is synonymous with darkness. Black is synonymous with evil. You follow that? And they call themselves white, synonymous with purity, synonymous with being an angel cake, devil cake, right? So our people call ourselves African American, right? This is a term that was recently created in the 1980s by Jesse Jackson. It was coined and made popular in the 1980s by Jesse Jackson. Our people recently started calling themselves African American. These findings is just not true. Just because we left Africa and came to America doesn't make us African American. Just because our people believe we come from Africa, Africa is a very, very large continent. If you ask your average African American, what country in Africa do you come from? Nobody will be able to tell you. They will go on 23andMe and these different websites and they will give them false interpretations and false realities. Our people are not African American, right? And even these terms, African American, even the term Africa goes back to a certain time point in where it was named Africa, the continent. Even America, we know the inception of America goes back to a certain time when it was named America. So this is why we're going to resort to the Bible to give us the true understanding and the truth about who we are. This is why I believe in giving people our God-given nationality. We have a God-given race. And when you come to find out, not only do we have a God-given nationality, but we are the chosen people of the Most High. The chosen people of the Most High. So we're going to start in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse number 37. Right, Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 37. The Lord shall smite thee. Oh, sorry. It says, and thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb and a byword among all the nations, whither the Lord shall lead thee. So the scriptures are saying that we're going to become a proverb. A proverb is a wise saying. Hey, guess what? What can an elevator do that a black man can't? Raise a family. If you want to hide something from an N-word, you want to do what? Put it in a book. You understand that? These are proverbs. These are wise sayings that have been placed on our people. It says also, and a byword, right? And a byword is what we call ourselves: black, African American, Negro, Afro American, Hispanic, Latino, you know what I'm saying, Mexican. A man cannot be from Mexico and people gonna call him Mexican. That's why I say that's a byword, man, and that's racist. That's something that our people do. A man can be from Honduras, a man can be from Guatemala, a man can be from Panama, a man can be from Bolivia, a man can be from Argentina. People look at him and say, oh, he's Mexican. You follow? It's Mexican food. No, it's not, brother. It's Peruvian food, right? So these are bywords and racial slurs that's been put on our people. The scriptures is saying that this is a curse that will happen to our people that we are seeing happen in 4K. Right, so we're going to also go to the book of Acts chapter 13 and verse number 1. In the book of Acts chapter 13 and verse 1, it says, now they were in the church that was at Antioch, certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simon, that was called Niger, and Lucas and Cyrene, and Menon, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. Right, so it says it was certain prophets and teachers that were called Niger. So when you read this, it's actually you're going to see it on the screen. Is G3526. When you go to the Greek concordance, or when you go to the Greek origin of this word, it means black. That word Niger, it means black. So that's the same thing that Nigger. That word, it means black. You understand that? To be called that is to be called black. And we shorten it up and say Nigga. Right? It all means black. So we actually know that this word Nigger is in the Bible. In Acts chapter 13 verse 1. But guess what? Who calls themselves that? Us. Say what's up, you know what I mean? That's something that our people go by. That's what the so-called white man call our people. And we're finding it here in the Bible. So not only can we find our history, not only does our history line up, is what I'm saying, not only does our history line up with the scriptures, but things that we live by, our reality lines up with the scriptures. So this is how we're going to be able to, first off, look and see how our people are people from the Bible. This is how we're going to be able to draw the parallel of our history and us being in the Bible, our history being documented in the Bible. We're also going to go to ancient artifacts. We're also going to go to historians, all these kind of things to prove this point. And you can also look up the etymology of the word Hispanic. The etymology of the word Hispanic, which means pertains to Spain. It's the exact same thing with the word Jewish, a Jewish man. A Jewish man is a man that pertains unto a Jew. It's the same way I say I'll be there at 7-ish. I'll be there around 3-ish. I'll be there around this time-ish. You're acting girlish. That's the exact same thing with a Jewish person. It's the same thing with Judaism, which is a religion. It's when you add the suffix ism, it's the practice of the root of the word. So Judaism is the practice of what? So-called Hebraics and being a Hebrew. You follow that? So when you read that etymology, they pertain unto Spain. So it's the same thing. These people are not actual Spaniards. You can't look at a Hispanic or a Latino individual and call them Spanish. A lot of our people do that. They say, oh, he's Spanish because he speaks Spanish. But there's a difference. There's a difference. And we're going to go into that in a little bit. But let's go to the book of Psalms, chapter 83, and verse number 1. Book of Psalms, chapter 83, and verse number 1. Right? On why there is a reason why these deceptions and these lies have been put in place over our people. The book of Psalms, chapter 83, verse 1 says, keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. Right, so people have taken crafty counsel against our people, right? And they have consulted against thy hidden ones, right? So what does that mean? To take a crafty counsel against our people is to set up whippets in my body. It's to set up galaxy gas. It's to set up various distractions, various rules, regulations, various societal norms to distract you from what reality and the truth is. That's what the crafty counsel is. The crafty counsel is saying, hey, guess what? We don't need to hold these people under chattel hardcore slavery anymore. We don't need to hold them to that standard no more. Why? Because their minds are so destroyed. Their minds are so far gone. Their minds and their opinions and their ideologies are so far off that we don't need to do that anymore. They will destroy themselves. They will kill themselves. You understand that? That is the crafty counsel that these people have set up against us, man. Right? That's the that's the systemic oppression that our people go through. This is the crafty counsel that was set up against us. This is why these lies were put in place to cover us. Because guess what? Once you understand that you're an Israelite, once you understand that you're a child of God, you have a sense of understanding your history. And once you understand your history, you can somewhat predict your future. Once you can understand your history, you can somewhat predict your future. So I know, and guess what? If my people, let's go to that in the book of Judith. Let's go to that in the book of Judith. So I know, and guess what? Every time my people get into this, my people get into that, and guess what? We're about to be besieged by the enemy, right? Every time my people don't listen to God, man, we're going to go into slavery, right? So let's actually prove that because it's written in the scriptures. This is why it's important for us to understand that our history goes back to the Bible and it goes back to Hebraic faith. So let's go to that in the book of Judith, chapter 5. I'm going to start at verse number 11. Right? Judith chapter 5, verse 11. It says, therefore, the king of Egypt rose up. Judith 5 and 11. Therefore, the king of Egypt rose up against them and dealt subtly with them and brought them low with laboring in brick and made them slaves. Verse 12, then they cried unto their God, and he smote all the land of Egypt with incurable plagues, so the Egyptians cast them out of their sight. So this is speaking about how the Israelites were enslaved in Egypt. This is speaking about how the Israelites were in chattel bondage under Egypt and the Pharaoh. So guess what? Understanding that, they were enslaved, and then God saved them from that slavery. They then went to the wilderness, and only 2 people will be able to inhabit the promised land after that. Let's jump down to verse number 17 in Judith chapter 5. It says, and whilst they sinned not before their God, they prospered, because the God that hateth iniquity was with them. But when they departed from the way which he appointed them, they were destroyed in many battles very sore, and were led captives into a land that was not theirs. And the temple of their God was cast to the ground, and their cities were taken by the enemies. But now are they returned to their God, and are come up from the places where they were scattered, and have possessed Jerusalem, where their sanctuary is, and are seated in the hill country, for it was desolate. Right, so this is what we're reading in the book of Judith chapter 5 is a conversation between heathens, between an Ammonite man. Right, so this is a conversation that our enemies understand. This is a conversation that these other nations understand, right? They understand our history more than we do. Why? Because certain knowledge and certain resources have been hid from us for hundreds of years. So they have the better knowledge and resources to understand our history better than we do. How you doing? I can't hear you. Yeah. You got 2 minutes to hear scripture though? There you go. You know the word? You got time to learn something new? All right, so what is the book of John, chapter 13 and verse 25? So you said you know the word, so what does that scripture say? back to what I was saying. Let's go to that in the book of Psalms, chapter 83. I don't got time for whispering. I'm not doing it. She gonna make me act up out here. Don't whisper to me and be a man when you listen. Let's go back to the book of Psalms, chapter 83. Why? Because these other nations have more knowledge about our history than us. So, book of Psalms, chapter 83, and verse number 4. Verse 3 just said, hey, guess what? They set up that crafty counsel against our people. Verse 4, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And that's exactly what we have seen, right? Other nations have came up with ways to let us be in the hood, but hey, guess what? We gonna go set up a store in the hood. So all of their resources, and all of their food and substance that they do get and buy is from us. Hey, guess what? We gonna set up a system to where as though they gonna live in the ghetto, but they not gonna have a Chinatown like we allow the so-called Asian man. They're not gonna have that. They're not gonna have the mental capability to go and do that. They're not gonna have the upbringing and the resources to be able to go and do that. But guess what? They're gonna be in the hood, right? Ignorant. You understand that? That's what your enemy would do, man. That's like if I'm boxing and I'm in a fight, and I know every time this man throws a jab, his right hand come down. Am I gonna stop the fight and say, hey, guess what? Every time you throw your jab, your right hand come down. You should probably stop doing that, because if you don't stop doing it, I'm gonna knock you straight out. Is your enemy gonna do that? No. Is your opponent gonna do that? No. This is called racism. This is called being a racist, right? Being a racist is preferring your race over other races. Being a racist is preferring your people over another people. This is why all so-called white people are racist. All so-called white people are not, don't hate. All so-called white people are not, they don't hate. You understand that? But being a racist is something that every nation will have. We're gonna prefer our people to be over another people. I'm gonna make sure the welfare of my people is good. This is why they have white privilege. This is why white privilege exists. I'm gonna make sure my people have a privilege to succeed in this empire, in this society, and all these other nations. They'll have a place, right? They'll have a region, they'll have a province, they'll have a section, but guess what? This is set up for my people. I did this for my people. This is why America, you understand that, has the sense of pride and bravery that it does. It stems in racism, them preferring their people over ours. This is why we can't lump ourselves in to be under their society. We have to be able to separate but exist. We have to be able to be in it but not of it. So I'm in this world, and by citizen I am an American, a so-called African American, by citizenship, but my true nationality given to me by God is Israelite. So let's jump up to segment number 2. Segment number 2 is going to be the history of Latin America. Segment number 2 is going to be the history of Latin America. And what you're going to see on the screen is 2 historians that have books and knowledge, anthropologists. They have substance and resources that's out that you can read on your own, and that I'm going to put on the screen, that researched and found the same found biblical findings, found the same findings that I'm going to share with you out of the Bible. One, you have Lee E. Huddleston, and he would go and he would show you that he would go and he would show you the research that would show you about how our people were here before Christopher Columbus came over here and founded these lands. Right, so there are historians and anthropologists out there that do have findings. It's not only Hebrew Israelites, it's also other historians and anthropologists that have findings that so-called Hispanics and Latinos were here on this side of the world before Christopher Columbus and them came over and discovered South America and Latin America. You understand that? So we're gonna start with and you also have Hebrew translators, right? You also have Hebrew translators that were with Christopher Columbus. Now, why would a Hebrew translator be with Christopher Columbus to discover this land that's unknown? You can watch the movie Apocalypto. It'll show you it in that. And you can also watch the movie, I think it's called 1694, the movie about Christopher Columbus. They have a scene where Christopher Columbus went to go get Hebrew translators and Hebrew scholars. And it shows you all that also in the book of Apocalypto. They have scenes that they show it to you, and you have anthropologists and historians that can back up what I'm saying right now, right? Why would he have Hebrew scholars to come over here and discover this landmass that was unknown? Why? The reason is because they already knew that there was prophesied to be a people to leave from that region of what we know today as the Middle East. So what used to be known as Assyria is north of the landmass of Israel, right? The so-called Hispanics and Latinos were slaves there. We're going to read about all of this in the Bible in just a second. They were enslaved there by Salmanassar under the king of Hoshea, right? In 720 BC. Right, in 720 BC, they were enslaved there under the king Hoshea. The war went on from 720 BC to 723 BC. So they were enslaved in Assyria. From that point on, it was prophesied, and they had it in writing. I just talked about how these other nations have more knowledge and more understanding of our history than us. They had understanding of the prophecies and the scrolls and literature that they did have about our history, that we would be sent off into a land unknown. So Christopher Columbus, having this information, he knew that he would have to take people there that could translate different languages, because he understood that these people could be there. This could, in the name of one of you have a name of one of the Hebrew scholars that did travel with Christopher Columbus. This is researchable knowledge. His name is Lovest de Torres. Lovest de Torres. I'm gonna put it on the screen. He was one of the recorded Hebrew scholars that understood, you understand, that language, for him to go over there and translate, so he can communicate with the people that he knew or that was prophesied to be there, right? So let's go to that in the book of 2nd Esdras. Let's go to that in the book of 2nd Esdras, chapter 13. This is where you will read the information that Christopher Columbus had prior to coming over here in the Americas. We have it right here in our hands. Our praise to the Most High. Right, in 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, and I'm gonna start at verse number 40. It says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king. Right, so in 720 BC, and from 720 to 723 BC, you had 10 tribes of the nation of Israel being carried away captives out of their own land. It says, whom Salmanassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Right, and we're gonna read it in 2 Kings chapter 17. But Salmanassar came, started the war, they conquered us, and he carried our people, the 10 tribes of Israel, away captive north of Israel into Assyria. Lord willing, I'm gonna put a map on there, you'll be able to see it. Verse number 41, it says, but they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes. Right, where no other mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes. Sorry, I lost my point. Which they never kept in their own land, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. Right, so this is the prophecy that you will read about, that Christopher Columbus. This is the wisdom and the knowledge that Christopher Columbus had prior to coming to the Americas. That there were 10 tribes of Israel that were carried away by Salmanassar, which is prior to Christopher Columbus. Of course, this is 720 to 723 BC. This is way prior to 17 hundreds AD. You understand that? Our people being carried into slavery and left out of their land. So from that point on, they have been gone. They have been on the other side of the world. You follow? Let's go to that in the book of 2 Kings. Let's go to that in the book of 2 Kings about the slavery. That's where it started at, man. The same way that we know that our slavery truly started in 520 BC when we were, you read about this in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 24, chapter 22, all the way up to chapter 24, about the Southern Kingdom, us blacks, West Indians, and Jamaicans being enslaved. So truly starting then, you understand that all the way up until now. The same way we know that we were slaves in Africa being sold to the white man. The same way true Africans, right? True Africans sold us, so-called black people, into slaves to the so-called white man. The same way we had to start from there to understand that we were in Africa and we're not here in America. It's the same way that we have to start all the way back when they were in Assyria being sold, when they left Israel. They started in Israel and they were sold under Salmanassar into slaves up into Assyria and were then scattered since then. And this is what we can read about in the scriptures. Let me read that in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 17, right? So we have to start in the inception and follow the lineage. That's kind of how it goes, man. You start in the inception and you follow the lineage to kind of see what's these people's history. It's called history, man. It's plain upon tables. It's called history, right? You start from the beginning to see their history and to see where they have been, and that's how you can predict where they are now. You start to see where they was and where they have been, and that's where you can predict where they're going to go in the future. Let's go to that in the book of 2 Kings, chapter 17, verse 1. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea, the son of Elah, to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. So this is during the time where Judah and Israel were separated into two separate kingdoms, right? They were separated into two separate kingdoms. So you had Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, and then you had the rest of the tribes that would dwell north of the tribes. So if you are not in the know about what I'm talking about, and you don't know about how at one point in time when the Israelites dwelt in their land, it was separate, meaning like their tribes were dwelt differently, there's a lot more information that you would have to catch yourself up on in order for it to make sense. I say that to say, we're reading about a time when Hoshea was the king of Northern Kingdom Israel. That's why it's called Northern Kingdom and Southern Kingdom. Let's read on. It says, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Salmanassar, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. That's what you call coonery, right? Top level coonery. Verse 4. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years, 720 BC to 723 BC. In the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and by Harbor by the river Gozan and in the cities of Medes. This is landmarks that you can look up to this very day. You can look up the river. You can look up the river Gozan. You can look that up right now, right? In a pop-up of Google. That's where they was put into slavery. That's where they were carried into slavery to begin before they came over to the Western Hemisphere of the world, what we know as the Americas and South America, before they became Aztecs, before they became Incans and Mayans, before they became Mexicans, Argentinians, Puerto Ricans, all these things. This is before they became that. You understand that? Let me read one more verse. Verse 7 says, for so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and had feared other gods. So that's how you know history repeats itself, man. The Lord said his judgment is like unto a ring, man. The Lord's judgment is like a ring, meaning it comes around in circles. That's why it's important to understand that, the history and where they can go. Now, let's move on to segment number 3. Segment number 3 is proving who we actually are, Israelites. It's to prove who we actually are as Israelites. So now that we can understand the history of Latin America, and we can understand the history of Hispanics and things of that nature, we can see about the slavery and all of these things that are very similar with what our people went through. Our people went through the same slavery and being sold and all this up there and rebelling against the Most High God. It's all synonymous in the same thing. So, but now you can understand that there's a difference. There is a difference between a so-called black man and a so-called Hispanic man, right? Because they were sold into slavery and separated from us at a different point in time than we were. They have been in slavery and captivity longer than we have, but they have been given certain liberties that we haven't. They went into slavery before we did, and they have gotten certain freedoms. And because like when you have battles, that's why they have their own land called Mexico and things of that nature. But what we're about to get into is about how it's still not necessarily their land because they were conquered by Spaniards. There's a difference between Spaniards and Hispanics. You understand that? That's why I touched on that looking at the etymology. So let's go to that in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, and we're going to touch on how that difference, right? That small difference that there is between them and us, right? In the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm going to read verse number 68. It says, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships." Right? So this is Moses telling the Israelites that if you're not obeying the commandments and the laws of God, you're going to go back into slavery on slave ships. This is the book of Deuteronomy, which is after Exodus. These Israelites were already delivered out of Egypt. So this is a prophecy letting the Israelites know, and guess what? If you're going to be rebellious and disobey, you're going to go back into that slavery by way of slave ships. So a lot of, when people think of, and let me ask you a quick question. When you think of slavery on slave ships, what people do you think of? Make them uncomfortable, right? When you think of slavery on slave ships, you think of so-called black people. But what people don't know is that if you research, you can look up something called the La Union, right? The La Union is a slave ship that was actually discovered from the ancient Mayans. This is why you have Spanish conquistadors. A lot of people don't talk about that. A lot of people don't think about that. A lot of people don't understand the significance of our Mayans and ancient Aztecs and ancient Incans being enslaved by conquistadors and Spaniards. That's the exact same thing of us being enslaved and being conquered by the colonizer, the so-called white man. It's the exact same thing. So that's, in that way, we share history with them. They were over here doing their own thing, and it was in wickedness, and it was in sin, sacrificing unto all different kinds of gods, led to them being enslaved by Spanish conquistadors. So when you're going to see on the screen is about how you can look up ancient slave ships that the Mayans and the Aztecs were put on. You also have Hernando Cortez. Hernando Cortez was one of the last people that would conquer the Aztecs, right? Hernando Cortez was a conquistador, a colonizer that enslaved the Aztecs and ended their whole empire, man. The last Aztec empire was ended by the hand of Hernando Cortez, which you're going to see on the screen and which you can look up. This is all resources and information you can look up for yourself. And we say that to say, and guess what? The same way the so-called black man was put on slavery on slave ships is the exact same way that the so-called Hispanic man and Latino man, or what we know today, was put in slavery by way of slave ships, of what we read in the Bible. Let's read on. It says, by the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. Right? So being sold as a slave man and being sold as a slave woman is not only a history that we share, But this is a reality and a parallel that we are facing that we can see in the scriptures. Let's read that in verse number 46. And Deuteronomy chapter 28. And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So when we're reading these curses in Deuteronomy chapter 28, they're there for a sign. So when we see the history, we look at that as a sign. Oh, this is a sign that this is the people that the Most High was talking about. This is the exact same thing Christopher Columbus did. He looked at it, he understood it. That was a sign. Oh, this history is something that they went through. Oh, this must be those people. If you read in a book about how, and guess what? This people, they're going to like their food unseasoned. This people, they're going to not bathe themselves. This people, they're going to have red skin. This people, they're going to colonize a whole bunch of people. You look at that, you're going to say, oh, this people did that, this people did that, this people did that. It's going to be an obvious parallel. That's what we have in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28. So let's go to that. Let's go to verse number 31. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, let's go to verse number 31. It says, Deuteronomy 28 and verse 31, it says, thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. This sound an awful lot like Thanksgiving, man. That's exactly what they call it. They call it Thanksgiving. They took away all of their animals, their livestock, their cattle, and things of that nature, and never restored it back to them. It says, thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. They show you that in the slave movies from with our people. We were on a plantation, and the so-called white man would take our children, take our babies, and sell them to different plantations, and there will be nothing that we can do about it. This is the exact same thing that the so-called Hispanic and Latino man went through, man. So this is how you can see parallels in the Bible from their history. This is how you can see parallels in the Bible with our history, right? So let's go to the book of Genesis chapter 49 and verse number 14. This is the book of Genesis chapter 49 and verse number 14. It says, Issachar is a strong ass, crouching down between two burdens. Right, so Issachar, when you look at the 12 tribes chart, research founded by the elders of the nation of Israel, and research founded by the scriptures, you understand that in history and studying anthropology, you understand that Issachar would be a forefather to who we know as Mexicans today, actual Mexicans, men and women that dwell in the actual country called Mexico. The scripture says they are as a wild ass crouching between two burdens. And that is an exact parallel, like we've been reading, about what they go through to this very day. A strong ass, what? Working hard. An ass works hard, right? An ass will pull certain things on your land, right? Tend to certain other animals on the land. Crouching between two burdens, man. So this is something, another parallel, and we can understand about how their history is synonymous with the scriptures, and their history is very similar to ours. And this is how we understand that they will be Israelites, the same way that we are Israelites, right? The same history that we have that's documented in the Bible, noted as Israelites, is the same things that they have. It's the exact same thing, right? So they have to come out of those bywords. We have to come out of those wise sayings and proverbs that our people go by, right? All of these countries, Mexico, Argentina, Venezuela, all of these places were conquered by a Spanish conquistador. You understand that? So they have been given a sense of freedom, but it's a false sense of freedom. It's not true freedom. This has been colonized. It has been colonized and conquered by Spanish conquistadors. So let's move on to segment number 4. Right, segment number 4 is going to be the honorable mention. honorable mentions that I'm going to put on the screen about how you can find ancient artifacts. You got something called a Miche stele, right? You have things called, you have all kind of ancient artifacts that you can find, that you can see that have Hebrew inscriptions, right? Think about the pyramids that's all throughout Mexico. An honorable mention. Think about all of the pyramids that's all throughout Mexico. What are they there for? Because when Aztecs, Mayans, and Incans were over here on this side of the world, they were in sin, going off. They were not keeping wholeheartedly all of the laws of their forefathers. They kept what they thought to be spiritual, what they thought to be right, the ways of the Egyptians. The exact same way America keeps the ways of the Egyptians. So they will build pyramids and sacrifice unto sun gods and things of that nature. The same way that you can see pyramids in Mexico lets you know that when you read in the scriptures about the history of the northern kingdom of Israel and the 10 tribes being carried away captives, you'll read about their history being in Egypt, to being carried away captive in Assyria, to going to a land that was never dwelt, known as the Western Hemisphere. They came over here and did the exact same thing, and they were conquered again by Spanish conquistadors, and history repeated itself. So that's why it's very important to understand the history where we come from, so not only we can understand our future, but so we can identify ourselves. Hey, what's going on, brother?
All right, how you doing?
I'm all right. Hey, what's your nationality? What's your race?
Black Afro-American.
Afro-American? Can I ask you a question about that?
All right,
brother. Brother said black and Afro-American. Black is a color. Afro-American is a worn out, old ass hairstyle that if I see you wearing, and guess what? I'm gonna get on your ass. But that's the lesson for the day about how Hispanics and Latinos are the exact same thing as our people. We share the same history, and guess what? We will be 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. Shalom.